think the cable box is an interesting device, and I think when we talk about addressability, we're talking about the cable and satellite boxes particularly. When we talk about IP delivery, then I think we're talking potentially about programmatic, not just addressable. And there's nuances of difference between addressability and programmatic. But if used sensibly to the same kind of marketing goals, you can get to a broad place. The key issue with television has always been, at what point does the increased cost of micro-targeting on an individual level reach such a volume that it is easier and cheaper to buy an aggregated, perhaps national audience, because the whole costs less than the sum of the parts? But people have always sort of stopped at that point and said the moment the whole no longer costs less than the sum of the parts, then clearly people will only buy the sum of the parts. It's sort of, as night follows day, they would say that's logical. And to an extent it is. The only flaw in the argument is that people don't know what they don't know. And enormous pockets of demand and the growth of new brands and the growth of existing brands depend on as much on the uninformed as they do on the informed. And so whilst programmatic and addressable video are going to be absolutely vital for message sequencing and moving people through the funnel for people you do know, then I think that dismissing the people you don't know and the broader reach potential of that is going to be a mistake. And it is possible to optimize yourself into invisibility. You could actually do that. Having said that, there is no question that the overall cause of television advertising, or should we just call it video advertising now anyway, that the overall cause is advanced by the increase in addressability and IP delivery. Because having the choice about whether you can target not only who you can target, but what you can target them with. Because the perfect buy could be to every person in the country, but a commercial that represents whatever their value is or whatever their place in the purchase funnel is great. And so the move in this country and in the UK and other places to a hybrid model in the short term of addressable TV and programmatic video, if you like, to use the common parlance, can only be good news for advertisers, can only be good news for agencies because it's really interesting, can only be good news for targeting because the whole thing becomes more data informed, and fantastically can only be good news for the distributors and the makers of the programs, because the higher the value they can attribute to those programs through the targeting, the higher the yield is going to be from those. And if you can increase the value of something to someone and then segment that value so it goes to the most valuable or potentially valuable buyer, that can only be good news. The good news gets compounded when you go back to think about one of the reasons why the Facebooks and the Googles are the large hadron colliders of their world is that their ownership of first-party logged-in data and their ability to associate the consumption of their media with many activities has been a thing that's broadly been denied to the television industry, if not the video industry up to now. Clearly, if someone is the owner of a set-top box, and by inference you can get to individual level as well as household level, you start having the same first-party data enrichment of that inventory that the other guys do. So when I think about this in the macro, as we come up to CES, which is always one of those kind of pause and consider and think about the next stage, I do believe we're moving into a data-infused world, an individual delivery enabled world, and a world of experience on the one hand and passive sensors on the other, that has actually arrived more quickly than perhaps we thought it did. So there are pieces of it that have taken longer than we thought. But if we look to the aggregate situation of what January 1st, 2016 looks like, compared to what we were speculating about on, say, January the 1st, 2012, I think we would have said, gosh, we've come a long way.